Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hello everybody, Namaste. My name is Deepa Doraiswamy. A few years ago I did a PhD thesis on temple management in Shaiva Agamas. How, while the Agamas, which are the canonical texts which tell us how to build temples, how to worship at temples, which are followed till today, which are about 2500 years old that we can see, but which the tradition believes is anadi or beginningless, which is as much of a canonical text for the various Sanatana Dharma traditional schools like Shaivism, Shaktism, Vaishnavism, etc. There are different agamas for the different schools of thought, the traditions. The agamas are believed to be as beginningless and of divine origin as the Vedas. While the Vedas are considered to be the breath of Shiva, or Shaiva agamas, Shiva Nishvasitam Veda, Vagrupascha Shivagama, the agamas are considered to be the word form of Shiva. Shiva, it's Lord Shiva himself is represented by the 28 Shaivagamas. As if you know the 28 Shaivagamas, one of it is the feet, one of it is the legs, one of it is a hand. So he is obviously doesn't have a human body. There is a body composed of mantras. There is a body composed of agamas. So he's imagined as a body of agamas, and this is borne out by a lot of literature. And there is also literature evidence from all over the country, even in Nepal, for example, where some of the ruins and the pedestals of the ruins, they say that this lady called Abhiri donated lands for the Sandhi Puja that we find in the Agamas. So much land was donated for Chandana, Dhupach, Pushpa. So typical Agama language is borne out there in those inscriptions. We also see that even at the time of King Ashoka, Kalhana's Rajatarangini mentions that Ashoka went to Kashmir, and there was an old Shiva temple called Shiva Vijayeshwara, which was the which was a main temple of Kashmir at that point of time. And he made repairs to the temple. It was a brick wall, so he built around it. He also established another Shiva temple in his own name called Shiva Ashokeshwara. So you see the same tradition across the country. In Tamil Nadu, a lot of the temples are named after the kings. The deity in the temple is named after the king who built the temple. So for example, the Kailashanatha temple is also called the Rajasimheshwara temple because of the Rajasimha Pallava who built it. In fact, in Rajasimha's Kailashanatha temple, we find that he's called Agamanusari, the one who follows the agamas. He has many names called the Birudas, where people praise the king and inscribe these things on the temple walls. His guru is called Sakalagama Paradrishva. So we see that kings throughout the history of the country, when they established these temples, they have followed the agama canon. Today, because of a lot of invasions and destruction in the north, we don't find much of this. But fortunately, in the south of India, more than 40,000 temples in Tamil Nadu alone, we can see that the core of what it was so many thousand years ago is still continuing as a living legacy. A lot of us are amazed at the heritage that we have, that these temples are such beautiful monuments, they have such beautiful sculpture. They have, and historically we see that they also played a lot of important roles in the village, in the state. A lot of researchers have studied that temples were the prime forces of urbanization. Today we imagine that there was a large place and in the middle of that city somebody went and built a temple. That is not true. There was nothing. The king went and said, okay, I am going to build a city here. So he first built the temple, and around the temple the city grew. So because like today's malls, which drive the economy for consumption, the temple was the core economic driver. It generated employment. There was a lot of consumption that happened. So many people worked around the temple, and more importantly, it was it was a town hall. People met there. There is a lot of inscriptional references which says the people of. So there is a Mahabalipuram, around Mahabalipuram there is a village, and the people of that village met in the Tirunandavana. Tiru is divine. Here it means any property that belongs to the temple is called Tiru. A lot of temple towns have Tiru, Tiruvannamalai, Tirumalisai, for example, in the beginning of their names, which denoted that there is a big temple in that town. The villagers met in the Tirunandavana in order to discuss their affairs. So it was also a social hangout where there was no other place for them to go, and every town did not have a beach. or any other place. So the temple was everything. It was a core of social life. So one of the researchers, James Heitzman, for example, has said that the temple lay not just spatially at the center, it lay spiritually and conceptually at the center of all social life. And it was an important center for education, for cultural center where people went and learned, and all the arts were kept alive. Because of the temple, the art of sculpting, it evolved to such an extent because of the patronage of the temples. Jewelry making, there was a lot of art and architecture. However, with all this, and it's also a huge historical record, because today most of Indian history is not written down, and so the temple inscriptions are one of the important sources for us to understand what went on, the lineage of the kings and so on. And so in spite of all this, that is not why temples are important. Temples are really important because they are living traditions. Even today, the worship done at the temple is exactly the worship that was done at least 1500 years ago. We see that 1500 years ago because we have inscriptions from that period. I'm sure it went on till, the tradition says that it is Anadi, which means beginningless, but literary evidence says that even in the Sangam literature of Tamil Nadu, which is dated to around 300 before the Common Era, also mentions different kinds of temples, different nomenclature for the temples, depending on the structure, depending on the design, there are different, depending on the location of the temple, there are different names. So whenever there are so many names, which means that particular thing was a very important part of the culture. So you can see that even during the Sangam age, temples were there and the agamas were there and followed. Now, so they are so important and they have lasted all these years. Even today, the worship happens exactly the same way as it happened so many thousand years ago, because of the Agama canon. Because everything, temple building, construction, worship, and how the thing organized within the temple followed the Agama canon. Now, the Agama canon specifies that worship at the temple should be done by a group of people called the Adi Shaivas. Now, in the Shaiva tradition, for the Vaikhanasa tradition, they specify Vaikhanasa and the Pancharatra, they are called the Bhattas, the Bhattacharyas. So, people created specifically for the worship of the temple. This is because one has to understand a company in the corporate world. I come from a management background. So, in the corporate world, a company which has existed for 100 years productively is considered a huge success. Now, these entities as an organization, if you look at a temple as a service organization, let's say it is a non-profit religious service organization, it has existed in this form, in the same form, doing exactly what it is meant to do for 2000 years. So how was it possible? Where did this continuity come from? Because the intention was that it has to stay forever, it has to live forever. So when the deity is established in the temple, the deity is asked to stay in that Garbhagriha when the energy, so I use these words very loosely. When I say energy, it's very difficult to translate the agamic and spiritual terminology. We tend to use the close English equivalent. So let us say the spiritual energy of Parashiva in the Shaivagama tradition. So he is that energy is invoked and asked to be present in the deity, that is installed in the Shiva Linga. And then the Acharya and the king, it is a tripartite agreement. A lot of researchers have studied it. It's a beautiful agreement where the deity gives authority to the king to rule on his behalf. The king derives the authority to rule from the deity, and therefore the king is responsible to the deity, and therefore the king protects the temple. The temple gives authority to the king, and therefore the king protects the temple. And the person who is the instrument, through his body, because of the yogic practice and the mantras and the rituals, so they say yantra, mantra, tantra, because of the combination of all that, the Adi Shaiva Acharya is the instrument through which the energy comes, and he is able to invoke the energy in the deity, and then they supplicate saying, please be present here forever. Not just for 10 years, 20 years, 100 years till I live, but till the sun and the moon exist. Yavat chandrascha suryascha tavat tishtati medhini tavadatra tvaya devyo statavyam miha sannidhav, which means in this sannidhi, where your presence, be present till the sun and the moon and the sky, they all exist, which means forever. So when you start a company and you want it to live forever, there's a popular saying, the saying, if you want to, I forget how it goes. So if you want productivity in 3 months, you plant rice. So in 3 months you can take rice. So in 5 years, if you want something, you plant bamboo. So in 5 years you get. If you want something in 100 years, you plant a banyan. Or I forget how it goes. So depending on how long you're planning for, what you sow and how you plan changes. So because they planned forever, everything in the temple is forever. So they said if somebody is giving flowers to the temple, that person does it forever. Somebody who sings the Dravida Stotra does it forever. He and his family, they are the family, they're called families of the temple. And it Tali Parivaram. Tali is Thala, Parivaram is family. All the temple inscriptions talk about the people of the temple. The workforce of the temple is called the Tali Parivaram. And the people who chanted the Vedas, they had to do it forever. So similarly, the people who did the worship had to do it forever, and not even, I am an Adi Shaiva priest, I do worship at this temple. I cannot go and do worship at some other temple. The same Adi Shaiva cannot go perform worship at some other temple, because his specific attachment or the bond, the tie is to this particular deity. There's a lot of technology behind it and nuance behind it, which I'm not going to go into here. But this is what we see from the Agamic text, the canonical text, which is being followed. We also see in practice. We see this is borne out in the literature as well. So the Shivacharyas are called Siva Srishti, because the rest of creation is supposed to be Brahma Srishti. And in the Agamas, Lord Shiva says that Agamas have come from Lord Shiva. So you see that everything is as if the rishis have asked him a question. Says Kailasha, in the mountain of Kailasha, the Lord is sitting, and the rishis are around him, and this Parvati Devi is sitting here, Ganesha and Skanda are there, and then one rishi asks a question, and then the Lord starts replying, and that becomes one particular agama. So it is the teachings of Shiva to specific sets of rishis. Now, so there, Lord Shiva says, for me, Mayartham, for my puja, for my worship, I have created these people from the 5 faces. So which are the Panchagochara, or the 5 Gotras of the Adi Shaivas. This reference you can find in the Sangam literature of Tamil Nadu, where the 5 Gotras, the Bharadvaja Gotra or the Kaushika Gotra, people from these Gotras were there, and they were some of the poets, and they were mentioned in these things. There's a lot of mention about temple worship happening. Tirumular, who wrote Tirumandiram, he mentions the Shivagamam and the Shivacharyas. Sekidar, who wrote the Periya Puranam, which is a record of all the 63 Shaivite Nayanmars of Tamil Nadu, he talks very highly about how the Shivacharyas alone are entitled to perform puja, Parartha puja at the Shiva temples. How to understand this is that whenever we perform worship at our home, it is called Atmartha, it is for our own self. But worship done at the temple is Parartha, and the Shivacharyas have to perform it. So do we have only Agamic sources? We also have inscriptional sources. Temple after temple after temple, if you take inscriptional, the inscriptions at the temple, they talk about how, the Shiva Brahmana, Shiva Vediyar, Shaivacharya, Panchagochara Acharya, Panchacharya. Panchacharya means Acharyas from the 5 Gotras. There are various terminologies that are used for the Shivacharyas. They are also called Thiruvunnadigai Sabayar. So the core, because they worship at the Sanctum Sanctorum, they are called the inner core of the temple. There was an outer thing that happened where somebody had to come to the temple Bhandaram, give out the paddy, give out the ghee, and whatever else was the flowers, whatever else was required for the worship. There's an outer circle and there's an inner circle. And so a lot of terminology is found in the inscriptions, and we can see that. So therefore, the core thought that I want to leave behind is that temples are our heritage. It's a living heritage. The more I study, the more I see. It's amazing that such a system, such a beautiful management system has been devised, so that these organizations, these entities can live in the original form that they were conceived in for such a long time, for thousands of years. And I would say that the onus is on us to ensure that this heritage extends to the next 2,500 years, and we should all contribute in whatever way we can in order to ensure that the heritage remains the way it is, and especially to ensure that the agamic injunctions are followed in full, both in word as well as spirit, so that we may continue to enjoy these spiritual spaces, and generations to come after us might also enjoy these spiritual spaces in the spirit in which they were conceived. Thank you for your time. Namaste.
Excellent.